Becky Lynch. Let me explain. The year of Becky Lynch has been quite short in comparison to some of the other people on WWE's roster, in that she has only really been active in the company since WrestleMania. WrestleMania, where, of course, she returned to partner Lyra Valkyria against Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez and win the Women's World Tag Team titles. This, of course, came at the cost of Bayley, who was originally set to partner Lyra at the show, but they ran an injury angle, they pulled Bayley out of there, and they threw Becky in. Now, of course, this resulted in a huge pop for Becky, who we hadn't seen in ages and ages and ages. She's been away raising a family and just being busy. It probably sucked for Bayley, who was only told, according to her, about the plan a couple of days before the show, or even a couple of hours before the show. I don't remember the specifics, but it was very short notice. You really could have informed her in advance. What it didn't suck for was Lyra Valkyria in the long run, because what did all of this stuff lead to? Well, when they lost the women's tag team titles back to the Judgment Day on Raw, just a couple of breaths later it seemed, Becky Lynch immediately turned heel on Lyra, blaming her for the loss and kicking off a feud over the Women's Intercontinental Championship. This feud turned out to be the making of Lyra Valkyria on the main roster. The Becky Lynch heel stuff in the past has worked to considerable effect, but here, in her role as a veteran and indeed a star in WWE, Becky entered a series of week-to-week performance custom designed to get Lyra over with the crowd. They wrestled each other multiple times, they clashed on the microphone, and characters were developed, stories were told, and by the end of it, I think it's pretty safe to say that Lyra was in a stronger position than when she'd entered. Now, strong argument to be made that Lyra should have won their final match. Perhaps she should have. I think that's a very strong argument indeed, and especially in the moment and the aftermath of that match, which wasn't their best offering, I would be compelled to agree with you. However, if you went down that route, it would have been difficult to elevate the other person that Becky has primarily focused on throughout this year and lift them to a new level of prominence, that being Maxine Dupree. Because if Becky Lynch just loses the Intercontinental title back to Lyra at that stage and doesn't hold it through, then the opportunity to use her to elevate Maxine with the Intercontinental title at the same time doesn't really exist. So Becky and Maxine have had these week-to-week clashes and so forth, where the theme was that Maxine's a little bit overmatched, and she's the babyface, she's the plucky underdog, she's maybe doesn't have the skill and the tenure of Becky Lynch, but my goodness, does she have the heart. And for every knockback, for every hurdle she had to jump over, she grew stronger and stronger until finally she dethroned Becky as Women's Intercontinental Champion. It is, of course, to Maxine's credit as well, because she has definitely improved as a pro wrestler. She entered this company with nothing, as a ground-up prospect, and has had to work very hard to get to where she is today. So I will not take a single thing away from her. Cannot knock the hustle whatsoever. But if you're going to fully tell the whole picture of this Maxine Dupree elevation, you have to focus on the other half of it, and the other half of it as well is Becky Lynch. A common thread starting to emerge as we go through this case for Becky Lynch being WWE's MVP of the year. Becky is, carry job is always an extremely strong phrase, and I'm reticent to use that here because I do think that Maxine is a lot better than she was, say, this time of year. However, the job that Becky has done in raising the level of performance for Maxine is quite remarkable, really. I mean, it obviously takes two to tango and all of that good stuff. And I wouldn't say that this was the case with Lyra, because Lyra's a tremendous professional wrestler, much more experienced than Maxine Dupree is. But if you just look at the way these matches are held together and the heel work that Becky's doing in them to get that babyface side of Maxine super over as well, you can't really knock what Becky's done here at all. And as a more of a meta point as well, is the Women's Intercontinental title, does it feel as cool as it does right now? If not for the efforts of one Becky Lynch, who at one point was the biggest star in WWE, the biggest full-time star, headlining WrestleMania with Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair, the man, the cultural movement that was the man. Without her going down to this secondary title, lifting up the people in the division and lifting up the belt as a result, does it feel as cool as it has done? Or does it feel like another United States Championship like that belt currently does over on SmackDown? I think it's a pretty easy case to make in this instance. But also, you want to talk about elevating people. So far we've talked about elevating a very talented pro wrestler in Lyra Valkyria, who maybe wasn't as over with the main roster, as well as elevating an up-and-coming wrestler who, like a year ago, was getting booed out of house shows for her performances. How about we now talk about elevating a veteran wrestler stepping back into the ring for the first time in 10 years and holding together the mixed tag team match at SummerSlam. I'm talking about AJ Lee, Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, the whole storyline. The thing that ignited this storyline and made it so compelling in the first place was Becky Lynch slapping CM Punk in the face. But then, of course, that builds to the AJ Lee return. That's what this is a vehicle for, and it's an incredible moment. It's a very entertaining match. And one of the reasons it's a very entertaining match is because if you go back and watch it again, if you didn't notice this at the first time, Becky Lynch's performance holds the whole thing together. A lot of it is built around building to an AJ Lee hot tag, building and generating the enthusiasm for that, the big euphoric moment when she finally gets in the match and gets her hands on that damn Becky Lynch. But Becky's performance is insane. I mean, look, AJ Lee has not wrestled in a long time. She was a little bit rusty. In there. And there were a number of spots throughout the whole damn thing where Becky works super hard to keep the whole thing together, to guide AJ through her first match in such a long time. And I thought she did an absolutely tremendous job in that as well. So you line all these things up and you have an incredibly fruitful year for Becky. So I don't think that MVP necessarily should be just a list of the person who's had the greatest number of incredible matches or whatever, right? Yeah, that's part of it for sure. But at the same time, I think there's more to it. I think that when you speak about MVPs and people who are just extremely valuable to a wrestling product, there's nobody more valuable than the person who goes out of their way constantly, over and over again, to make everyone else look good and to elevate the people they come into contact with and to raise the floor and make the product as a whole better. I think that is the most compelling case to make for MVP, and to me, that is Becky Lynch in WWE in 2025. There's a lot of people out there who don't appreciate what she does. A lot of people who don't like the man. A lot of people will tell you, Becky Hogan's won again. The problem with that argument is that, yeah, she needs to win a few of these matches to retain the credibility. Putting Maxine Dupree over doesn't mean squat if Becky Lynch has been beat like a drum throughout 2025. And by the way, she has lost her fair share of matches as well. Because those losses mean something when you put an effort into protecting the star and raising them up and making sure that they are still a credible thing in 2025. Not that Becky Lynch is past her prime or anything like that, but she is very much in the star-making stage of her career. And she's been working all that all year long. I think that to those who don't appreciate Becky Lynch and what she does, number one, I mean, a lot of the times, look, it's 2025. There's a lot of careless hate that goes around for a lot of wrestlers. But I think a lot of people will maybe, if they're capable of this level of reflection, look back in a couple of years, look at what Becky's done and go, yeah, that was really beneficial. That was really worthwhile. Because wrestling needs more of this. We often hear in wrestling about egos and people throwing out burials and politics and all of this stuff and going into business for themselves. Maybe Becky's done that at some point in her life, but I don't think it's been evident any time this year. She's done the exact opposite, in fact. I think this is actually a case study for what you should do. If you're a veteran wrestler with huge name value who is a star and who has been a star, and you have these younger wrestlers on the roster or returning vets like AJ Lee who maybe need a bit of a helping hand in their first time back, this is a case study in how to do that. This is a case study in how to be the MVP of WWE in 2025. And it's not to say that other wrestlers haven't had great years. Many of them have in the Fed. But across the board, from start to finish, I think that Becky has been the one. And hey, look, maybe if she was here before WrestleMania, we'd have gotten another couple of these feuds. Maybe we would have gotten another elevation, like Lyra Valkyria, like Maxine Dupree. Maybe we'll get more as 2025 ticks over into 2026. I think that really is the best way to use Becky Lynch in this kind of era of wrestling. You could absolutely have her win the big belt again. No question at all. But if you want to maximize her name value and get others over in the process, having her work with these talents is maybe the best way of doing that. And look, I'm not saying she had a perfect year. That Nikki Bella match wasn't any good. Eesh. And Becky's performance in that was subpar by her standards. The way she kind of threw her head against the announce table while Nikki was trying to slam her into it. It wasn't great. It wasn't great. But even the greats have misfires every now and then. And it's very, very difficult to find someone who's had an outright perfect year. It's why I wouldn't say that Becky Lynch is the wrestler of the year, because her output is, you know, that match is a bit of a black mark. But there's a few other moments you can point at as well. But in terms of adding value, in terms of elevation, in terms of lifting people up and making them look good, she's the man. She's the one. And she's WWE's MVP of 2025. If you disagree with me, that's cool. Sound off in the comment section below. Who would you pick as WWE's MVP of the year? I think there's a lot of interesting candidates out there, from a Sami Zayn, the US title and all that good stuff over on SmackDown, to Cody Rhodes, to whoever else you want to name. Stephanie Vaquer, great shout. Great shout. But there's plenty of options. Debate in the comment section below, my friends. We'll be back with another version of this for AEW, and I think you're going to argue over that choice as well. So stay tuned, and I'll see you later.